Hi, I'm Pastor Nathan Wood of North Dayton Baptist Church, and welcome to day 136 of the McShane Reading Plan. Today we are in Numbers 25, Psalms 68, Isaiah 15, and 1 Peter chapter 3. As we go into this, I want to mainly comment on the 25th chapter in Numbers here. This is a rather odd and violent account here. What we have is a son of Israel, one of the children of Israel, brings home a Midianite woman into the camp of Israel. They were commanded not to intermarry with the Gentile nations as they were coming into the promised land, which they haven't entered in there yet, but they're not to cross marry or intermarry with other nations. Why is this? It doesn't mean nowadays, of course, that different nationalities or different races are not supposed to marry one another. That's ridiculous. For Israel, what it meant was he was putting them aside, not for racial reasons, but for holiness reasons. They were a family chosen, not an ethnicity. They were a family that was chosen. That's why they're called the children of Israel. They became a nation, but they are essentially a family. So what happens is they were chosen because through them the Messiah would come, Jesus Christ. So at this point, Jesus has not yet entered into the flesh. He has not yet been born, so the bloodline still needs to be preserved. Certainly, it needs to be kept pure. So when intermarriage happens that is contrary to the will of God, that's a serious offense. Now you say, well, God does allow Gentile blood into the bloodline at one point or another, or a couple points actually. Yes, he does. But who is to decide when that happens? God is. Just like God told Moses when to speak to the rock and when to strike it, it's not up to us to change God's will or to say, well, why now and not then? God alone determines his will. God alone determines how things will be done. And here he is angered by blood being entered into the camp of Israel that is not supposed to be there. It's against his command. So, what happens? A plague breaks out. It says that thousands are killed by this plague, but to stay this plague, Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, the son of Eleazar the priest, takes a javelin or a spear, and it says, and he thrusts both the man and this Midianite woman through, killing them and thus satisfying the wrath of the Lord. So what does this tell us today? Does this mean that we need to go out and hunt all sinners down and kill them with the sword or the spear? No. No. This is not what we're supposed to do. Christ gave us the example in the New Testament that he who lives by the sword is going to be perishing by the sword. He rebuked Peter for cutting off the ear of the servant in the garden that was coming to take him. But it's important to remember that God's holiness is violent and deadly. That doesn't mean that we should be violent. What it means is that we need to be adamant about casting sin from our lives and from our midst. As an individual, we cannot earn God's favor by works of our own doing, but we certainly can put barriers in between us and God by having sin in our lives. It's important that we seek his aid in saying, Lord, see if there be some wicked way in me. Ask for his conviction so that he can take those barriers out from between him and you. Sin is a problem in our fellowship with Christ. We should want to please him because we love him, and we should want to have a perfect relationship with him, free from any sin. But in the household of faith, you see, sinfulness within the household of faith also can hold up things. It was Jonah's sin that caused the storm in the sea, that because he was running from God. If problems arise in the household of faith in the church, it could be because of somebody's sin. It's important to realize that we need to search our hearts and pray for one another so that we would turn aside from evil and press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God. Because sin is a problem and can prevent us from experiencing good and can bring God's judgment upon us. He judges and chastises those who he loves. He wants holiness. He shall have it. It's my prayer that you're pursuing that willingly. We love you. Have a good evening.